everyone. Today I am tackling a job that I've been putting off for quite a while, and that is upgrading the hoses and Y valves for my septic system on the boat. When I bought the boat, one of the Y valves was stuck in one position, and the other Y valve was not working, but I used some lubricant and I got it working. And the macerator pump works fairly well, but I thought I'd replace that as well, since I'm going to do the whole system. And this will be a two-part video. The second part will be uploaded in the spring when I replace the toilet. And I'll just go over everything and show you what I'm looking at now, and what I plan to do, and what it looks like after. My holding tank and most of the hoses that I'll be working on today are located way down under the V-berth. Now you can see the V-berth is ready for me to start working on the septic system. So the cushions just lift up. I've just moved them to one side because the only side I have to access is on the port side. There you can see the macerator pump under the step. And over on the port here you can see one of the Y valves. And that's the Y valve that's still working, so that controls the input into the tank and the output going to the deck pump for a pump out station. On the left there you can see there's more hose that's coming from the toilet, and there's the second Y valve that is broken. You can even see that the handle is broken off, and that controls the output from the toilet, whether to go directly overboard or into the holding tank, which that's the position it's stuck in. So I just want to replace all the hoses, the Y valves, with newer, better ones, and that work. And before everyone gets too grossed out, all those stains there, that's not actually from the holding tank. I don't know why, but someone decided to mount this Y valve with bolts, or with nuts that or screws that were not stainless. So that's all rust stains down there. So the first thing I did was a very rough drawing of the septic system, and I measured the hose, and I just needed to know what exactly do I need, what diameter hose and how much length for each type of hose, the Y valves. And I also mentioned I'm replacing the macerator pump, so I just took down the model number and things like that. So the first hose I'm going to disconnect is the last hose in the system here before it enters the holding tank. And I've just placed a large bucket here to capture anything that may be in that hose. So just as I suspected, the hoses are bonded really well onto these valves. So I'm just going to show you what I do. Is I end up just getting my X-Acto knife, utility knife, and I just cut a straight line perpendicular to the valve there, and I might have to make a couple cuts, but then I'll be able to just pull that hose off really easily, and it will free it up. So, taking a break for a minute, here's part way through. I've got some of the hoses apart. The problem with this hose right here that I'm pointing at is that it's like a radiator hose or something, so it's got wire in it, and it is totally bonded with this elbow. So I finally got one side off. Then I was able to pull the elbow out more from the wall, which made it easier. I just cut it off So I'm going to try and get that off. In hindsight, I would have just bought a new little elbow so I wouldn't have to salvage this one and reuse it. So before I move on, I'll just show you how I am getting this hose off. I just cut a few parallel cuts into the outer layer of this type of hose. It's got this wire in it. And then I wedged this little flathead screwdriver under and pried the wire up a little. Then using my snips, I would just get in there enough just to cut the wire. And I just kept working my way all the way through so I can release that wire, because that's really what's keeping this together. And now I'm just going to make a couple cuts here, and I should be able to just peel the whole thing off easily at this point. There you go. Now it's off. But that is one tough hose to remove if you ever run into this type of hose that has the wire in it. So there's that screw that is not stainless steel, and look how horrible it looks. One thing I forgot to mention before I did all this is I ran a whole bunch of tank cleaner and water through the hoses. So that made it, when I did disconnect these hoses, a little bit of water did come out, but it was all the treated blue water, and I had some paper towel down there, so there was a little bit of spillage, but not much. But you can actually see the blue in the paper towel. I discovered very quickly when I first started trying to assemble this new setup was that this hose is very tight. Even though it's 1.5 inches, and this is an 1.5 inch fitting, it's really difficult to get the hose on there. And I had a hard time with the Y valves. So I talked to the guys at the marine store where I purchased this, and they said one of them used to actually do a lot of this for a living. So he said, boil some water, stick the hose into the water, leave it there for a couple minutes to about that depth. Then get a little dish detergent, put it on your finger, just put it on the inside of the hose there like that, and then you can fit the hose on much easier, and it seems to make a difference for sure. So it's something you might want to experiment with and try if you are doing a job like this, because one of the biggest challenges is that these hoses are all in really confined spaces, and I don't have a lot of room for leverage to muscle these hoses onto the fittings. So in the case of having a piece of hose that's already attached to the Y valve there, I have to somehow soften up the other end of that hose, and I can't obviously dunk it in a pot of hot water. So I've got my pot of hot water here, a microfiber cloth, some really well insulated gloves. They're actually for outdoor insulation, but this cloth is going to be really hot, and I'm going to hold it on the top of that hose once I've got my gloves on and that's dipped. So I'll just move the camera again so you can see exactly what I'm doing here. Now, there's just not very much room here, so I wish I could record me actually putting the Y valve on here, but I don't think I'm going to be able to do it without knocking the camera over or getting enough leverage to do it properly. So I'll just have to show you the after results. So there you go. It went on fairly easy, and the water's still a bit hot, but yeah, you could see how quick it was as soon as I stopped the camera. So I applied some of the dish soap here to the inside of the hose, and then also to the fitting itself. And it slips on fairly easy. You have to do it pretty quick after you remove the heat from the hose, but I'll tell you, it is night and day difference between doing that with no heat on the hose first and just a dry hose, or even a hose that's slightly lubricated. The heat really does help. I wanted to just quickly show where the rust stains were. That's that screw hole which had the non-stainless screw that was causing all the stains. So I just used a rubbing compound that I use for polishing and a really fine wire brush, and just worked it in to the stains and then washed it off. Well, phase 1 of the upgrade is complete, and I'm just going to show everyone what I've done and how the system works. Here you can see this is the old hose that comes from the head. It travels way over to here and meets this first Y valve. From here you can decide to pump into the holding tank or to overboard. So if I'm to switch this, now it would be pumping overboard. It comes up to this elbow that I've reused, which is above the water line, and back down to that through hull. Now this would be pumping straight up to the holding tank where it meets a second Y valve, which is set right now to pump into the holding tank. If I change this to here, now the flow will come from here out to the deck fitting so I can use the pump out station. I really like these Y valves because they have those arrows and the flow, so there's no confusion on which way that valve is set right now. I've used 2 different types of hoses. This hose is very rigid and not a lot of bend and flex to it, which is nice because it keeps this whole system sort of stiff and in place. This hose had quite a little bend I had to make to get into the tank. This is called Tiger Flex. It's a lot more expensive. It's a sanitary hose as well, or for sanitation systems I mean. And I just couldn't get this other hose to bend enough to make that, and I didn't want to put plastic elbows and things. The last thing I've done is put a new macerator pump in, and it just has a 1-inch hose that rises again above the water line and to this through hull here. I wanted to put 2 clamps on, but this hose is so tight on here I'm going to have to maybe change this fitting when I'm working on the boat on the hard in the spring. And that's it. It was one of those things I've been putting off for a long time, and I'm glad that I've replaced everything now, and it's a lot cleaner down there and everything works, which is the main thing. And I learned a couple things. So that's the first phase, and the next video won't be up for a couple months when I'm going to replace the toilet and all the hoses related to that when I'm up on the hard. So we'll see you guys on the next video.